Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Elba Iris Perez, who is a historical fiction author, and this is her first book, and it's called The Things We Didn't Know. And Elba, I wanted to ask you, what made you decide to write a book?
Well, thank you for having me, Selena. I'm
You're
very
welcome.
excited to be here. I've never been to Worcester, so at least I get to be there virtually. So you're asking what made me decide to write this book?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's a little story. Um, there is a town called Waranoco,
Okay.
which is not a town, it's a village, which is about 7 miles from Westfield and is part of Russell. And
Okay.
have you seen Russell?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, it's in between Westfield and Russell. And there's a paper mill there. There was a paper mill there. And my father worked there. And so when I was an infant, we came to live in Waranoco from Massachusetts. I'm sorry, from Puerto Rico. And so I was born in Puerto Rico and spent the first 12 years of my life in Waranoco. My father really loved his job there, and he started sending away for relatives and friends from Puerto Rico to come to work at the paper mill. And eventually, one whole side of our street was Puerto Rican, and the other side was American. And so it was a marvelous place to grow up in. Um, and I left when I was 12 years old. My parents divorced, and so I was coming and going between my father and my mother, Puerto Rico and the United States for a long time. But I stayed in Puerto Rico through college, got married, had kids, and in 2002, I came to Massachusetts to visit two brothers of mine and asked them to take me to Waranoco. And this is actually the last scene in the novel. That part is real. And so they take me to Waranoco, and when I get there, it's all torn down. All of the houses have been torn down, and the paper mill was closed. There are a couple of streets where people still live, and there are some houses, but the street I lived on was torn down. And so it was just, the impact of that you feel, of seeing something that you knew so well all of a sudden doesn't even exist. And I'm a historian. I have a PhD in history. And you can imagine being a historian, I thought, oh my God, this place is gone. I have to write about it. But then, I went from writing a book of history to writing a novel. But that's the story behind the coming of to life of this novel.
Okay, so that was the whole inspiration behind it. I
Right,
see.
right.
So, what do you think draws people to these kinds of books?
To these historical fiction books,
Yes.
I think they may be drawn to the fact that some of it is true, and that it sheds light on a particular period in time or a place or characters. And historical fiction allows you to write about a real place or a real character, or even some of them may even be very well known, but then it allows you to make up part of it, or to better say, fill in the gaps and be creative with your imagination, imagining what could have happened. And that's what I do. I create like an alternate reality.
Okay. So how much research did you have to do in order to write this book?
Actually, I did quite a bit because it's not only set in Orinoco. The main character, it's a coming of age story.
Okay.
And so it's, the whole life of this girl, this woman who becomes a woman. And a lot of what happens to her, I don't know personally, you know. She goes to school in Amherst, for example. I've never been to Amherst. And she lives in Boston. I have spent very short periods of time in Boston. So I had to research quite a bit to get those things right. And also, I didn't spend my entire childhood in Orinoco. So I had no idea what you would do in Orinoco as a teenager. So I reached out to people and, found out, where they went, what they did. So a lot of it was actually filled in with research.
So, or were those people that you actually knew when you lived there?
Yes, but what happened is I'm not sure if when it was announced that I won a prize, because I don't know if you know that this book won a prize.
Yes.
And at some point, that was probably it. But at some point, people from Orinoco started contacting me. And oh, that was just incredible.
Wow.
And so I was still working with an editor. And the editor asked me to add some things. And I wasn't sure where to start to add those things because there were things I didn't know, so I had to do research. And I asked one of the the people who had contacted me, were you there as a teenager? And she said, yes. So what did you do? And so she's in the back of the book, at the end of the book, in the acknowledgments. I think she is Cheryl. And so she told me, all the things they did. And so yeah, it was really cool. And it still is, to be in touch with the people from Orinoco.
Still in touch with them? Are you?
Yes. But
So,
I got in touch with them because of the book. I had not known from them, you
oh,
know, for my entire life. Because when I returned to Puerto Rico at age 12, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have cell
right.
phones. You couldn't make a phone call from Puerto Rico to the United States. I mean, it was enormously expensive. And so you would make a long distance phone call for an emergency, to say somebody died or something like that.
Right.
But you didn't call people just to chat with them. And calls were, if you remember, you paid for every minute of
Yep.
a phone call. So when I left Roanoke, I lost touch with everyone from Roanoke and Russell and the neighboring towns. And this book has brought them all back to my life.
I was wondering if it maybe brought all of them back together too.
I I think that they actually have um um I think they actually get together,
Ah,
periodically.
okay.
So
So before the book.
before the book, yeah. Like they have a Russell Elementary School Facebook page and things
Oh,
like
wow.
that.
Okay.
It's pretty
Interesting.
cool.
Interesting. So, of all of your research, what was your favorite research story? Was it just getting to know the people again, or getting to know the people?
Well, definitely getting to know, finding everyone all over again. There are a few that I haven't found, but finding all of these people, of course, was like just incredible. But I really enjoyed doing research on Amherst because the employees at Amherst, I've acknowledged them in acknowledgments of the book too. And these people were marvelous. I mean, I just didn't think it would be that easy. I wrote to them one morning, and that afternoon I had a response. And then they continued writing. And it wasn't an easy thing that I was asking. I was asking them in 1968 or 69 or 70, you know, whatever year it is that she goes to college. I think it's 70 or 71. What buildings were there? I mean, what? Because it suddenly occurred to me, oh my God, she's going to Amherst. What is Amherst like in 1970? At first, you know, I looked it up on Google and I thought, oh, she could have stayed here. And then I thought, when did they build that?
No,
So,
I know you said it's a coming of age story, but could you give us a little idea of the plot without giving,
sure.
spoilers?
So the plot is about this girl who, like me, comes from Puerto Rico and to Orinoco because her father works at the paper mill. And she lives on the same street where I grew up on. So it's great because I did that because I really know the physical geographical area really well. Because Orinoco is a wilderness. And as a child, I just ran around wild. We all did. And so she, unlike me, stays there her whole life until she goes to college. And she has a very traditional Puerto Rican family, and her whole family is there. And so it is about wanting to be a part of a community, but having the difficulty of having a family who doesn't want you to be part of the American community.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so she wants to be part of the American community, wants to be like them, wants to do the things they do, but her family does not allow her to go out without a chaperone. And even that, they don't allow her to go out, period. And so it's being in a place that you know you will never be a part of until you're an adult and you can make your own decisions. So it's the yearning of a young girl to belong, you know,
Mm.
and to be part of something somewhere, because she goes back to Puerto Rico and comes back to the United States. So I am trying to show an experience that I went through and that I know millions of people all over the world go through,
Mm,
you know,
absolutely.
all over the world. It's not just in the United States, it's everywhere, where people and not only move from one country to another. I mean, this happens to kids when they move from one neighborhood to another.
Hmm.
It's that
Absolutely.
sense of having the rug taken out from under your feet, of not knowing how to behave, what exactly to say, you know, it's
Hmm.
an identity crisis.
Yep, absolutely. So, what was the biggest challenge that you had in writing and putting out the things we didn't know?
I would say that the biggest challenge was writing something that was not the real story,
Ah, okay.
because I'm a historian. So I was focusing on the real characters. And then I said, I can't do that, because what happened was I was going to write a worker story, a story of the men who came to work there. But they all passed away one by one. I waited too long to come up with this idea, and they all passed away. And so I had to shift gears and do fiction. So I didn't know what I was getting into.
Ah.
So I had to create all of these characters. And, you know, I think I'm a better novelist than I am a historian now. I think I came up with some pretty cool characters.
Speaking of characters, what was your favorite character, and which character did you love or hate the most in the story?
Well, can I mention two?
Oh, absolutely.
Because the one I hated the most is this very conservative aunt who would not allow Andrea, the main character, to go anywhere or do anything but cleaning and cooking and that kind of thing. And so this very strict aunt is like the most, everyone hates her. And my favorite character is Titi Machi. Titi means aunt, Aunt Machi. And her real name is Cecilia, but she goes by Machi because she's a machito. And she's my favorite character because she's just delightful. She's a delightful person. And when Andrea goes to Puerto Rico with her brother, Titi Machi takes care of her and is like always there for her throughout her whole life. And being a historian, I knew that it's very important when you're writing anything to bring in characters who are not commonly seen in literature. So I created Machi as a person who nowadays would be called trans, but this is the 50s.
Hmm.
So Machi is a woman who dresses like a man, and shaves her face and wears men's cologne and things like that. But at that time, the word trans didn't even exist. And so Machi is just the sweetest, most loving person with the children. So she's my favorite character, and I feel very proud of having included her in the book because people ask me, well, why did you do this? And why did you include her? Well, because there's gay people and trans people everywhere. That's why.
And
And
in
they
every time.
and they were there in the 50s as well, you know?
Right. All
So,
right. So what else can we expect from you in the near future?
oh, I am now writing um, a novel that is also set in Puerto Rico, but off an island that I did make up. Um, and she is a young woman who is discovering that she has inherited abilities that her father had, who were very strange, that were very strange abilities. So I guess you could say she's a witch. So she's inherited these abilities and she's learning how to deal with this, yet continue living a normal life and for people not to notice. And so it's magical realism. It's not fantasy because it doesn't have the whole, tropes and everything of fantasy, but it is kind of out of the ordinary, when she has these experiences.
Mhm.
So that's where I'm going right now, kind of more real Puerto Rico and the culture and all of that, but magical realism inserted in there.
Interesting. All right. Now I have some questions now about being a writer. What is your favorite part about being a writer on the whole writing and publishing process?
Uh, the favorite part is the writing itself, just and the solitude, which is not solitude at all because you're immersed in this world that you create. So my favorite part is when I walk into my little office and close the door and I'm in this world with all of with these characters and plotting, trying to come up with, what happens next? What if this happens? What if that happens? That's my favorite part. I have this thing written somewhere, I'm here to immerse myself in this world where, everything else disappears. So that's my
Okay.
favorite, the
Okay.
writing.
And and what's the most challenging part of the writing process, and how do you overcome that?
Well, the most challenging part of writing is dealing with life and, not dealing with life, but dealing with what having to come back to coming back to your writing after an interruption, you know?
Okay.
Because when you're writing and immersed in this story, when I go to bed, my mind is thinking, what if this? What if the other? What if, my mind is, I'm doing dishes or cooking and I'm thinking about the story. So it's this whole immersion that allows you to write something for 300 pages with all these characters. You've got to be immersed in there. And when something happens and you're away from it for days, it's very hard to get back into it. Very difficult, very testing. And I can see why that's where many people give up.
Hmm.
So what I do is I have these cards that I write after I finish the scene. I write a card with a summary of what the scene is. And then when I come back, I used to start reading from the beginning again to start remembering everything. And now I just look at those cards
Mm-hmm.
to
Good
get,
idea.
back into the story, remembering what I was writing, where we were going with this.
Good
But
idea.
you have to have a way of getting back into it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Um, what has been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
Having Simon and Schuster discover me,
Ah,
give me the opportunity that they gave me to tell my story, to be known, to be published. That's it'll never, there will never be something bigger than that.
okay. I would imagine. And how did
Yeah.
that happen?
They they started a contest called Books Like Us. And I had written this novel and I had submitted it to 15 people, 15 agents. You have to go through a literary agent
Yeah.
first. And then the literary agent sells the novel to a publisher. And so I had submitted it to about 15 agents who all passed. And I said, well, this is a book about Puerto Ricans. Who's going to care? That's what this country is like. I just got very negative
Mm-hmm.
and just put it away and started writing the novel I was just telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on the porch having coffee one morning and saw this, because I've always stayed up with reading literary journals and magazines on writing. And it was either Poets and Writers or Writer's Digest that I was looking at. And I saw this advertisement for a contest called Books Like Us. And I thought, you know, books like us, that means minority people. That means what they call nowadays diverse. And I thought, well, I'm Puerto Rican, but I'm a redhead. And I still get that. People say, why did this woman win? She's a redhead, you know? She's not even Puerto Rican, you know? Well, redheads are Puerto Rican too. We have blondes and reds and black and every color, and Indian, more Indian looking people. But anyway, I thought that would be a problem. I thought they wouldn't be interested in me because I don't fit the stereotype of Puerto Rican. But that was a flashing thought.
Yeah.
I'm a go-getter. I've always been, somebody who will go towards her goals. And I have to say, for people who are listening or watching this video, being persistent is important, but there are different ways of being persistent. I put that novel away when 15 people rejected it, when 15 agents rejected it. But that doesn't mean I wasn't persistent.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing the right thing. I was waiting for the right time. And when I saw that ad, I said, okay, I'm Puerto Rican. I'm sending this in.
Mm-hmm.
And it won.
That's fantastic.
It won. I still can't believe it. I
That's
cried on that video. I hate that video because they recorded it when they told me. And I just couldn't believe it. 300 people sent in manuscripts and I won. So that's how this all happened.
okay. So, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned thus far in your writing career?
I guess that right there
Yeah,
is the
that's what I
greatest
thought.
lesson, to believe in yourself. And I do, but there are moments when you say, well, maybe not. But when you have invested, I mean, look at this. You know how much work that is?
I can
That's
imagine.
that's a lot of work. So I think, when you have invested this much time into a project, there must be something good in there. So keep going with it. No. And so I think the lesson is just believe in yourself and do absolutely the best you can. And if it's good, if you have done the absolute best, you should be able to
Mm-hmm.
find a way with whatever it is that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You
Now,
just have to wait, you have to
mhm.
wait for the one thing that is very important for authors to know. You have to know and believe that there is a place for your book. Like I was submitting to all of these agents, but this particular contest was for a book like mine. It was books like us. It was for people from diverse backgrounds. And so that was the right place for my book. And that's
Mhm.
what you have to wait until you find that.
Right.
That's my lesson.
So, is that the one piece of advice that you wanted to share with other writers?
Absolutely. But
Okay.
I have another one.
Okay.
Okay. So when I wrote the first manuscript, I went to an editor and paid her. And I asked her, do I have talent? Do you think this is worth my time? And her name is Marcela Landres, and she's a editor in New York. I met her at a writers conference, and she said, Elba, you do have talent, but you don't know anything about writing a novel.
Ah.
That manuscript, that first manuscript was like rambling on and on and on and on and on. It was incredibly long. And she said, I'll give you some advice. If you want to be a writer, you need to learn what writing a novel is about. I recommend you take courses at UCLA. And Selena, that's what I did. I
Interesting.
took the courses at UCLA. And if you can see behind me, I read all those books. I
Yep.
have another shelf behind me, which is all my history books, because I have a PhD in history. And I had to switch gears and learn about plot and learn about character and learn about, you know, how to write dialogue, how to write description. I had to learn all of that. So you cannot expect things to magically happen just because you want to write a book.
Ah,
You can't just sit down and write and think, oh, I wrote a book and expect it to people to want to read it. The ramblings of your mind. No, there's a specific art here, technique, knowledge of grammar and structure of language and vocabulary. I mean, all of these things that I've run off right now, you need to know.
very important.
Yeah, so I
Very
had to
good
go back. I
information.
had just finished a doctorate degree, and this woman tells me I need to go back to school. So I put my manuscript away in a folder on my computer, and I went back to school.
Wow. Did you get a whole new degree or just
No, I
classes?
didn't because I don't need that. But I took lessons with two professors who are amazing, Harry Yout and Judith, and they are on the back of the book. They wrote blurbs, and I learned what I was lacking. But the thing that most taught me was that right behind me, reading all those books. That's where I really, because, in a book, you can like go at your own pace, take notes, let your mind absorb at your pace, the information. So what I'm saying to writers is learn the craft. Learn the craft, and then let your mind just go and write, 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 write. But you have to learn the craft.
Now, are some of those books just novels by other authors, or are those just the craft?
There are like this whole shelf is all books on craft, on um, uh, characters, plot and structure, dialogue, setting, all on craft. And then reading novels, of course, if you want to write a novel, then you need to read novels and see how they are written, because everybody writes differently. And so you learn, oh, I can do this. Oh, I can do that. So you learn just little tricks of the trade.
Mhm. So, are there any clubs, groups, or organizations that might have helped you in your career that you would recommend to other writers?
Um, well, obviously UCLA.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
It's the writers extension program. And I was in a group called Las Comadres para las Américas. Las Comadres. That is a group, have you ever heard of it? It's a group
No.
here in the United States of women, Hispanic women, but everybody else is allowed, anybody is allowed into the group. And what they do is like, they embrace you when you come to this country and you're trying to figure things out. And I got in that group when I first came here 10 years ago, and they did a writers conference in New York. And going to that writers conference opened my mind about, the whole process of submitting a novel, how do you get an agent, and what the publishing process is like, what they're looking for, all kinds of things. And that's another recommendation for writers. Go to a writers conference, meet agents there. You do have to spend some money to do these things. But that is what is going to inform you and, put you out there, so that you understand the industry, because there's a lot to learn.
Mhm.
I have to say that, the Las Comadres para las Américas and the Writers Conference, that they did, I think it was in 2016, it are things that helped me along the way.
Okay, that's wonderful. Now I have questions about you as a person. What is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
Um, I'm not sure what to say about that, but maybe that I love to cook.
Okay, that's fine. That's good.
I just love to cook things from all over the world,
That's
and I
wonderful.
remember like in the 70s, I was making tabbouleh.
Oh,
People
wow.
would be like, and I was making hummus in the 70s. So,
Hmm.
at
Yeah,
that
that's
time, nobody knew what any of that was.
great. Okay, that's good.
Just because
Um,
I wanted to learn to cook things from other countries, and so I did. I'm terrible at Chinese food, though. I never get it right, so I gave up on that.
uh-huh. Not even a beef with broccoli or something. Okay. So what are your passions? Obviously, cooking is probably one of them when you're not writing. And how do you make time to do the things that you love?
Um, my passion is my two kids. My son Edgar and my daughter Isaura, are the greatest thing in my life. And so when I'm not writing, I want to be with them. I want to see them, know what's happening, constantly. And whenever they call, like I put down my writing and I'm all ears. I mean, they are everything to me. And then there's my husband. He is the love of my life. And he has been so supportive of me. My kids are both on their own now. And my son has a little girl, and she is, I don't even have words for that love. That is beyond words. I love her
Mhm.
beyond everything in the world, little Lena. And so my passion is spending time with my family.
Okay, that's great. And what does your writing space look like? And what do you need to have around you when you're writing or
Yeah,
editing?
well, right behind you is my office. My back behind me is my bookcase, and I have a desk right in front of that and a door that is closed. And what I need to write is silence. Some people can go into a cafe and they actually write more when they're hearing chatter around them. I can't work with noise around me. It's terrible. I wish I was not like that, but that's one of my traits. If a neighbor starts mowing the grass or um, things like that are loud noises that you can hear from one house to another, I will have to get up and go into another room. I need silence. I need to
Hmm.
be able to escape into another world.
What about food or drink? Do you have any preferences when you're
Oh,
ready?
when I'm writing, um, I always like to have water or coffee or tea. So yeah, and I sit back, like this and kind of look at the computer and let it go around my head and take a sip and get back to it.
Now, do you outline your story or
I
are you
do.
a pantser?
No, I don't believe in being a pantster because I have done that. And then you get to a place and you have no idea where you're going and why you wrote all this. That was the first thing I did. And you've written all of this. You spent all this time and you have nowhere to go with it. So I like making an outline, but the deal is you don't have to hold yourself like what is that called? A straitjacket to your outline. It's your outline. You made it. You can change it. But when I'm writing a scene, it's important for me to know why I'm writing this scene. Why are we sitting, in the car talking about something? But what's the next action that's going to happen? Because we can't be sitting there for too long. I mean, where is this going? I need to know.
Okay, sounds good. Writers usually have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions with them to either help them or hinder them with their work. And do you have any? And
I
do they
do.
help or hinder you?
Oh, I have my baby boy. He's a Yorkie. He's called Ozzy. And he has his bed right under my desk. And our routine is, that we work after breakfast, we come in here and work. And we go out for lunch with my husband who works from home. So we all meet for lunch in the dining room. And then at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he jumps on my lap and we share an apple. He only gets one slice, but I make it last, like giving him little bits. And so that's our routine, his apple with his mom every day.
It
So
generally keeps
he
you,
thinks he had an apple. His little bites.
but it generally leaves you alone while you're writing.
Yeah, he just sleeps there. And then my husband will come and get him after we have our apple usually and takes him out to play with the ball. So he's the play guy.
Ah,
I'm mom. I'm here for the cuddles.
okay. I just have two more questions. One is, where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? And you can get you can get Elba's work at Annie's if you call us at 508-796-5613, or you can email us at orders@anniesbooksworcester.com. And where else can people find your work?
Oh, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Most bookstores are carrying it. Um, and of course online. But I'm in Houston and here, Blue Willow Books, all the bookstores have it.
Okay, great. And my last question is, how can we follow your work and share your awesomeness?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I have a Facebook page, Elba Iris Perez, and I'm on Instagram, Elba I think it is. But if you look up Elba Iris Perez, you will find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And I have a author page, but I don't keep that up as much because people don't go to those pages as much as they do Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, well, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much for being with me today,
Thank
and
you for having me.
a lot of luck with the things we didn't know.
It's
And
wonderful to be here. This is the book. I hope people enjoy it.
and hopefully we will be seeing you coming out with a new book.
Yes, I hope to have, at least to submit it by fall. So then it's a year or two after that.
Okay, excellent. Elba Iris Perez, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.